Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for being here with us today. I'm Katie Earle. I'm the coordinator of our University Express program, and we're joined here with Courtney Speckmann from the Buffalo Presidential Center. Welcome, Courtney.
Hi, good afternoon. Thank you.
Thanks for being here. Before we get into her presentation, I'll just quickly breeze through our normal housekeeping because we have some new folks on. We are recording this session, and I'll try to post it on our website in the near future. We'll be communicating with you today through the Q&A panel. So let me just deactivate the chat there so we're not causing any confusion. Okay, just the Q&A panel. So if you have any questions for Courtney as she's going through or any comments, feel free to type those in and we'll try to get to as many as we can at the end of her presentation. So if you're new, the Q&A panel is located on the lower right-hand side of your computer screen if you're on a computer. Click on that, and if you're on a tablet or smartphone, touch your screen. That brings up your control panel. You'll see a circle with 3 dots. Click on that. Then you'll see Q&A, and there you have it. So we hope you participate with us. We'd like to thank our sponsors, which is our Department of Senior Services, Blue Cross Blue Shield of Western New York, Excelsior Orthopedics, and Wegmans for their support. And don't hesitate to call Senior Services if you need any help, because we're at 858-8526, and we'll do whatever we can for you. All right, so the star of our show. For over 10 years, Courtney Speckmann worked at the White House Historical Association in Washington, D.C., where she served as the Director of Education. She holds a master's degree in museum education from the George Washington University and a bachelor's degree from Susquehanna University in history with teacher certification in social studies for grades 7 through 12. She returned to Buffalo and currently serves as the Director of Education at the Buffalo and Erie County Naval and Military Park. She's also a member of the Board of Trustees of the Buffalo Presidential Center. Courtney, thanks for being here. It's all yours.
Thank you so much. It's great to be here today, and thank you for joining us on this Tuesday afternoon. I am sitting right now in the conference room of the Buffalo and Erie County Naval and Military Park, and I'm here to talk about the White House. So before we get started, I did want to just put in a quick plug for the Buffalo Presidential Center, since I do serve on the board and in both roles. The Buffalo Presidential Center is an all-volunteer 501c3 nonprofit organization chartered by the state of New York to explore and share stories about Buffalo and Western New York's historic and contemporary contributions to the U.S. presidency and national affairs. Buffalo has one of the richest presidential histories of any city outside of Washington, D.C. For more than 10 years, the Buffalo Presidential Center has presented a variety of programs and exhibitions to audiences throughout Western New York. And with the support of Erie County and the Buffalo and Erie County Library System, the Buffalo Presidential Center's new 1,700 square foot museum space for permanent and rotating exhibits and collection storage was completed this past November, and we are currently open on Saturdays from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. So this is just a few pictures that are showing the inside of our new space. So we hope that you have a chance to check that out. For today, we are going to be talking about the history and roles of the White House as a park, a stage, a home, office, and museum. A lot of the photos that I'm going to show you, I do have a lot of photos. I will do my best to describe them for those of you who are joining us on the phone. But those photos come from the White House Historical Association, which is where I used to work, as well as the Library of Congress, the National Archives, and who oversees the presidential libraries. So a lot of the pictures will come from the presidential library's collections as well. So just as an overview of what to expect today. It was first called the President's Palace back in 1792 when Pierre Charles L'Enfant drew up the plan for the federal city. Congress had passed an act that called for the new national capital to be constructed on the banks of the Potomac River. President George Washington had the authority to pick the site of the city and select the exact locations of all of the principal government buildings, the Capitol, the White House, including and others. L'Enfant's idea for the chief executive's house was originally 5 times the size that it would eventually be built. So calling it a palace seemed appropriate at the time. But for a new republic whose leaders would be ordinary citizens and not kings, the building itself was scaled back in the design and the plans of the city, and so was its name. It became simply known, as we see here, as the President's House. So this is a map showing that area. The entire federal government was going to move from Philadelphia to the city named Washington in 1800. So the first president needed to move quickly. A national capital had to be created from scratch, and many influential citizens of both New York and Philadelphia, the first two capitals of the country, really wanted to see this effort fail because they enjoyed hosting the capital in their own cities and thought that they had their own metropolis worthy of continuing to be the capital. But George Washington was not going to let this dream of a new city fail. He turned to his Secretary of State, Thomas Jefferson, who posted this advertisement in the newspapers, calling for $500 or a medal of the same value that would be awarded to the creator of the winning design for the president's new house. There are only a handful of design drawings that survive today, so it's hard to know how many people actually contributed or submitted a design, but we know at least one drawing was submitted by Jefferson himself, although he did not win. The one that caught Washington's attention was by an Irish-born builder named James Hoban, and his design was selected. Here we see George Washington in the front. This is from a postage stamp. George Washington on the left and James Hoban on the right. Hoban oversaw the construction of the house, which was completed by enslaved laborers who worked alongside Scottish stonemasons and other European craftsmen, as well as white wage laborers and other free African-American wage laborers. It took many years to work on the construction, the original construction of the building. This dates to 1798. It started in 1792. This floor plan of the first, or we know this as the state floor, is the earliest known drawing of the president's house. Rooms of various sizes and shapes give a nice variety to visiting guests who were intended as the occupants for most of these rooms. These were public rooms and open to visitors and other guests. Although the house has since seen many renovations, this original floor plan is still familiar to anyone who visits the White House today. These rooms are the same shape, the same size. There's still just the pattern and the flow is still very much the same as James Hoban's original plan. For this continuity over 200 years, about now almost 225 years, we have a number of presidents to thank, which we will discover in a few moments. The president's house was ready for occupation in November of 1800 to a degree, mostly. John Adams, our second president, was then in office, and he commented that he would rather live in a townhouse than move into the enormous drafty structure. It was the largest residence in the United States by far, and probably a little overwhelming to anybody moving in. Adding to John and Abigail Adams' dismay was the fact that the interior of the house was still unfinished when they moved in. About half of the 36 rooms had not been plastered at all, and there was a big hole where the grand staircase had been planned but not yet constructed. The largest room in the house, the East Room, which we see here, was also incomplete. And because Abigail Adams thought that the president's clean laundry should not be aired outside on the lawn for everyone to see, she set up her laundry lines inside the East Room. Mrs. Adams' list of problems was long, but she did think that the view of the Potomac was beautiful, and she admitted that it was a house for the ages. The day after President Adams moved in, he wrote to his wife, who had not yet arrived, "I pray heaven to bestow the best of blessings on this house and all that hereafter inhabit it. May none but honest and wise men ever rule under this roof." Franklin Roosevelt was so taken with this quote that he had it engraved in the mantelpiece in the state dining room, where it was eventually carved in marble. So this blessing from John Adams is now carved in the mantelpiece in the state dining room. The Adams moved out of the White House after only a few months because Thomas Jefferson won the presidential election, and a precedent was forged as the first family, always temporary residents, departed to make way for the next occupants. So So from November of 1800, when the Adams moved into the house, the Thomas Jefferson's inauguration was the following March. So there was only really a few months that the Adams got to live there. While president, Jefferson's architectural design skills were put to use in a practical way. He may not have had a say in the design of the original house, but that doesn't mean that he didn't contribute to adding his own flair, his own designs to it. He worked with Benjamin Latrobe, the surveyor of public buildings, to design and build long colonnades that extended east and west of the White House to serve as service and storage spaces. So here we can see the main building of the White House, and on either end we see the colonnades, the corridors that extend on the east and the west side. The West Colonnade still exists today. That's what we see in this picture, and it leads to the Oval Office. Latrobe, who was more intensively involved in the Capitol building and the construction of the Capitol, is given credit for the ideas of the north and the south porticos on the White House as well. After Thomas Jefferson left the White House, the Madisons moved in and disaster struck in 1814. So not long after the house had been built, it had only been occupied for 14 years at this point. But during the War of 1812, the British invaded Washington and set fire to the White House. Dolly Madison ordered George Washington's portrait to be taken down and spirited away before she herself escaped at the last minute. She had expected her husband, James Madison, to return from near the front lines for dinner, but was forced to leave when word arrived that the British soldiers had won the Battle of Bladensburg and were on their way to the capital. When the British arrived, they helped themselves to the meal, which was still warm, before they set fire to the house. And here in this picture, it shows the burned structure of the White House after the fire. And because of James Madison, the White House was rebuilt after the fire on the same site, and it was faithful to the original design. Some congressmen talked of rebuilding the house on another site, perhaps even in a different city. People were always thinking about whether Washington should continue to be the capital city, but Madison, quickly had the damage assessed to prevent that from happening. While the interior and all of the furnishings were completely destroyed, the exterior walls were mostly standing. And he brought James Hoban back again to rebuild it according to his original plan. And it was ready for James Monroe's tenure in 1817. So this is a drawing that's supposed to depict what it looked like after it was rebuilt. The next major construction at the White House occurred in 1902. Theodore Roosevelt was the youngest president to serve up to that point. He's still the youngest president that we've ever had. He just wasn't elected when he became president because, as many people, especially in Buffalo, know, he was vice president when William McKinley was shot in Buffalo and he became president. John F. Kennedy is the youngest president to be elected president, but Theodore Roosevelt is the youngest to become president. And he brought 6 children to the White House with him, who we see in this picture. From the very beginning, the president's house was designed to be a home and an office. And although the Roosevelts lived on the second floor of the White House, anyone who had business with the president would walk upstairs to his office on the same floor as the family's private quarters. Throughout the day, strangers would be only a closed door away from the first family's private quarters. And if anybody knows anything about the Roosevelt children, it was that they were very rambunctious and probably a little distracting for the president trying to get work done down the hall. So Roosevelt decided that he needed to move his office out of the White House proper, the actual residence. Greenhouses, which we see in this picture, had been added over the years to the west of the house, and these were ordered to be destroyed to make way for a new structure. This is what the greenhouses looked like, and here is the first executive office building. To calm the protests of what he called penny-pinching congressmen, Roosevelt intended for this addition only to be temporary. You can see even in the plans here, it's his first floor plan of the temporary executive offices. This is what the first West Wing looked like, the executive office building. The president's room is not yet oval, but it is in the top left-hand corner. It says President's Room. Of course, these were not temporary, and they remained, and they were later expanded in 1909 during the Taft administration and made permanent as well. You can see on the side of the building, there is a seam. It looks like a seam that goes down in the middle, where in the back, you can see an ovalish structure standing out. Everything to the left of that seam was the original executive office building, and then everything on the right was part of the expansion in 1909. So here is the first Oval Office. Taft included the first Oval Office as part of this expansion. And here is a new floor map, kind of a map of what the expanded executive offices looked like. So what was Theodore Roosevelt's office became the Congressional Waiting Room, kind of in the middle. So you can see the seam of where the original office building was, and then everything on the top was part of the addition, including the first Oval Office. Another expansion of the West Wing occurred during FDR's administration. Another floor was added above and below the original offices. And the atrium that you see here, it looks like an open air atrium, was later covered up during World War II as a security measure. You can also see here that the Oval Office has moved. It's not in the center of that wall, it's now in the corner. That's where it remains today. This provided more light and easier access to and from the residence, the actual White House building. And here's another map that I really love to point out. It's from Time magazine. There's a little bit of tongue-in-cheek embedded in all of these little descriptions. You see the Oval Office in the top right corner, and this is tilted on the side from where the other two plans were that we saw. The room that Roosevelt used as his office is where the little wigs wait here, and that is now referred to as the Roosevelt Room. We have, the press areas, which were included in all of the executive offices. You have the here wigs, big and little, pause to be photographed. So you have the sunken court surrounded by offices. So it kind of is a good way to show how the offices have expanded over time, at least on this one floor. There are multiple floors now. Since then, and perhaps since it was first built, the biggest building project occurred during Harry Truman's administration. Soon after moving into the White House in 1945, upon the death of FDR, Truman noticed large areas of cracking plaster throughout the house. A structural survey revealed major problems caused by stress from previous expansions. One of the biggest causes of the stress, in addition to time, was the fact that during the Coolidge administration, they added a third floor attic to the house made of steel on top of the original wooden structure. So it was just putting a lot of weight on top of the house. So the floor even collapsed in his daughter Margaret's room. And Truman wrote about it in his diary, saying, "Found the White House falling down. My daughter's sitting room floor had broken down into the family dining room. How very lucky we are the thing did not break when Margie and Annette Wright were playing 2 piano duets where the floor broke." In 1948, Truman appointed a commission on the renovation of the executive mansion. They decided to retain the original outside walls, the third floor and the roof, which had been added during the Coolidge administration, but they removed and then reinstalled all of the interiors within a skeleton of steel on a new concrete foundation. In the end, after this renovation or reconstruction, very little of the 19th or early 20th century interiors remained. 2 levels of sub-basements and service areas under the north portico were added, and the grand staircase was substantially changed and moved into the present location right on the inside of the entrance hall. So now the White House has 6 floors. Adding 2 sub-basement levels created 6 floors inside the White House. It's always a lot bigger than what it appears from the outside. Of the stateroom floors, only the newly painted state dining room walls were reinstalled. So all of the other interior walls are they do date from this reconstruction. The renovation took several years to complete, which you might understand by looking at this picture of the construction equipment inside the walls of the White House. They had to pretty much gut so many of the walls and add the steel structures and beams to reinforce it. And the Trumans lived across the street at Blair House for a majority of his presidency until 1952. And so as you can see, the task of restoring these interiors was just monumental. And today, any visitor who is inside the White House at the entrance hall will see this plaque on the floor that serves as a reminder of these 4 important years in the history of the original construction of 1792, the rebuilding after the fire in 1817, the renovation during the Theodore Roosevelt administration in 1902, and the reconstruction in 1952 at the White House. So this just serves as the plaque just serves as a visual reminder of the major history, the history of the building and the renovations and changes that have been made to it. Almost all first ladies have influenced the decoration and furnishings of the White House. The Truman renovation offered a fresh opportunity, however, and the interiors that we see today are based on the efforts of the past 60 years in particular. After the money kind of went into the renovation of the house, there wasn't a lot of money left for the furnishing of the White House. So when the Kennedys arrived, by the time the Kennedys arrived, a lot of the furniture had been purchased from just department stores. They did not have a lot of historic value, but there obviously were some objects that remained from the collection, but there were no policies in place to preserve and keep anything that was in the collection. So early in 1961, Mrs. Kennedy worked to bring continuity and method to the process of collecting art and artifacts and decorating the public rooms. So as I said, before the Kennedys came to the White House, not only was there no set process for the decorations, but presidents and first ladies were free to get rid of any decorations and furniture they did not like and replace it with whatever they wanted. In fact, Congress often encouraged them to sell furnishings so that they could purchase new things for the house and use the funds to make new purchases. Under Mrs. Kennedy, professional curators and museum experts were hired for the first time. And in September of that year, Congress passed legislation providing that furniture of historic or artistic interest might become permanent property of the mansion. The public rooms were first recognized officially for their museum character, and indeed the White House can be classified as a museum largely thanks to the preservation efforts of Mrs. Kennedy, who famously told Life magazine, "Everything in the White House must have a reason for being there. It would be sacrilege merely to redecorate it, a word I hate. It must be restored, and that has nothing to do with decoration. That is a question of scholarship." Today, visitors see a representation of the best of American art and craftsmanship throughout the White House, and it is an accredited museum by the American Alliance of Museums. In all of the rooms on those that state floor that I was showing you earlier in James Hoban original design, in the East Room. So this is a more modern photo of the East Room, which is the largest room in the house. The Green Room. This is the Blue Room. I always love asking kids, what room do you think this one is? Because then we have the Red Room, the State Dining Room, and the family dining room, which was redecorated by Mrs. Obama and added to the public tour at that time. I know sometimes it's on the public tour and sometimes it's not, but the Committee for the Preservation of the White House is consulted on any changes or acquisitions, and the First Lady is always involved in these decisions. These spaces are traditionally designed in a way that promotes the best of America and shows who we are as a nation to all visitors. Of course, the First Lady has also been the focus of much of the public's curiosity, and this has naturally extended to the entire First family because the White House is, after all, a home. So on this page, I just shared a collection of photos that I personally love to highlight the house as a home. Lyndon Johnson with his dog Suki that are both howling together. We have Caroline and John Kennedy on the south lawn having a picnic outside the White House. In the top right corner, there's a picture of First Lady Grace Coolidge and her pet raccoon, Rebecca, who was actually given to the Coolidges, meant to be a meal, I believe, but they could not bring themselves to eat the raccoon, so they adopted her and kept her at the White House as a pet. See, she even has a leash. They were taking her for walks outside the White House. In the bottom left-hand corner, this is a photograph that shows Susan Ford's senior prom in the East Room of the White House. As far as I know, it's the only prom to take place inside the White House. We have David Eisenhower's birthday party with Roy Rogers and Dale Evans in the bottom. That's Dwight Eisenhower's grandson. And then on the bottom right-hand corner is Amy Carter with her friends at a pumpkin carving birthday party. In the first half of the 19th century, for the most part, young girls and boys living in the White House were grandchildren of the president and the First Lady. The presidents tended to be older men whose children had already grown and married by the time they were elected. When Millard and Abigail Fillmore lived in the White House, their daughter, Mary Abigail, lived with them and would often fill in as hostess on behalf of her mother, who suffered from various illnesses and a foot injury, which made it difficult for her to stand for long periods of time. She had been a teacher for many years and was the first First Lady to continue working after marriage. Mrs. Fillmore urged her husband to seek congressional approval to establish the first White House library. Harriet Haven, the wife of Fillmore's law partner in Buffalo and friend to his wife, reported that Mrs. Fillmore was accustomed to be surrounded with books of reference, maps, and all of the other requirements of a well-furnished library, and she found it difficult to content herself in a house devoid of such attractions. The Fillmores received a congressional appropriation to start a library in 1850, and this wood engraving from approximately 1866 depicts the yellow oval room library on the second floor during the administration of Andrew Johnson. Here is a photograph of the same room, which was taken in 1890 during the Benjamin Harrison administration. And with the Lincolns came children, among them two young sons, Willie and Tad. In the 19th century, it was not unusual for children to be privately tutored in the White House, and Tad and Willie Lincoln studied in the family library on the second floor. This engraving, published in Frank Leslie's illustrated newspaper, shows President Grover Cleveland's wedding to First Lady Frances Folsom Cleveland, also from Buffalo, which took place in the Blue Room. He is not the only president to be married while in office, but he is so far the only president to be married at the White House. He is also the only president to serve two non-consecutive terms, which is why he is the 22nd and the 24th president. When the Clevelands returned to the White House for his second term, they brought along their daughter, Ruth, who is here in this picture. Their second child, Esther, was born a couple of years later, and she remains the only child of a president to be born inside the White House. Ruth, again, pictured here, was almost too well loved by the public. One day, Ruth was on the White House lawn with her nanny when a crowd of curious visitors surrounded them, and one of them picked up Ruth and passed her around to be hugged and kissed by all of these strangers. I think of security concerns, that would be a little unnerving. Mrs. Cleveland happened to see the entire thing from a White House window, and she was so frightened that she ordered the South Lawn gate closed to visitors for the first time. Prior to that, anybody could walk on the lawn of the White House and explore the grounds right outside the house. The Clevelands decided at that point that their children would not be made available to the public again. Security issues in general are not new. In the 1800s, there were policemen at the White House, but most of the time they were just doormen in plain clothes who kept a weapon in a closet nearby. Nothing official. Much of the time, visitors were free to walk on the lawn and come into the house to see the president. Some presidents even held visiting hours where anybody could walk inside the house to see them. After President William McKinley was killed in Buffalo in 1901, security really started to tighten up around the White House. It's one of my favorite photos of the uniformed force that was created. Here you see them at roll call with Quentin and Archie Roosevelt falling in line. In 1917, the decision was made for the Secret Service to protect each member of the first family, not just the president. But just love the kids falling in line with their Secret Service at the house. For generations, first families have attempted to retain some semblance of a normal life after they've moved into the White House. Not always an easy thing to do, as we see President Ford swimming laps in the pool with just a whole host of press trying to record and take pictures and microphones talking to him. But in protecting their privacy, they've given up the opportunity to enjoy some of the everyday privileges that the average citizen has. So going to the grocery store, going to a movie theater. There are a lot of challenges and a lot of things that need to happen to make arrangements just for them to go out to dinner. Not that they can't do it, but it is a big process in order to go anywhere as the president. William Howard Taft stated that the White House was the loneliest place in the world. And I kind of see that in this picture a little bit, with the president by himself in the pool with many people surrounding him. Still, life does go on at the White House, as it does for every family, and they have added a few comforts of their own over the years, including, we saw the outdoor swimming pool. We have TV dinners with the Reagans, which I always love to see. There's a bowling alley. There is a movie theater, a putting green outside, and at one time there was an indoor swimming pool that was built for FDR. It was later turned into the press briefing room in 1970. Funnily enough, the swimming pool still exists under the floor in the briefing room, and some joke that whoever is standing at the podium is over the deep end because they are literally over the pool. So there is still a pool outside, as Gerald Ford showed us, for the first family to enjoy. They just do not have the indoor pool anymore. Whether the president's office is in the West Wing, Oval Office, or on the second floor, or in a partition space in the state dining room, which is what we see here with this is where President Thomas Jefferson worked when he lived at the White House. The White House is known as the place of business for the most powerful figure in the nation. Many of our most dramatic moments in history have occurred within the walls of the president's house. In 1898, President William McKinley turned the White House into a communications center during the Spanish-American War. When the USS Maine exploded in Havana, Havana Harbor off the coast of Cuba, McKinley received the information from a telephone call at 3 o'clock in the morning. Soon, a special telegraph office was established on the second floor of the White House. Members of the staff referred to it as the War Room. The office allowed McKinley to contact the Army and Navy and to chart the progress of the war on maps pinned up to the walls. Usually the telegraphs were at the War Department, just west of the White House, and over 3 decades before, during the Civil War, Lincoln had to walk across the lawn to the War Department building in order to contact his field generals. But McKinley brought them over to the office of the Commander-in-Chief at the White House. And the war, which lasted only 3 months, was a major victory. The French ambassador commented that much of the rapid success of the United States was due to the communication equipment available to the president. Another president who utilized communication technology was Franklin Roosevelt. His well-known fireside chats were broadcast from what is now the diplomatic reception room, and ironically enough, the diplomatic reception room did not itself have a fireplace, but the point was that the public and the American people would be gathered by their fireplaces to hear their president. When the Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor, FDR was able to make immediate contact with American people and inform them of the catastrophic event. At the White House, FDR signed the Declaration of War against Japan, which is what we see in this photograph. This is a photograph of the White House on December 7th, 1941, the day that he said, the day that shall live in infamy. Already you can see the crowds gathered around the White House anticipating the nation's entry into World War II. You can see here how the house itself is very dramatically lit on the outside and rather tranquil looking. This would all soon change. Worried about the safety of the president and his family, and worried about the White House being a target, the Secret Service put bulletproof glass in the windows of the Oval Office. Sentries patrolled the grounds, and builders constructed a bomb shelter under the East Wing. The Secret Service also ordered many of the windows to be painted black, and heavy black curtains covered others, blocking all light from the house itself. Throughout the 19th century, the executive mansion generally had an open door policy to the public in times of war and peace. Virtually from President Lincoln's first day in office, a crush of office seekers and visitors would flock to the White House to gain the president's support and advocate for specific causes. President Lincoln signed the Emancipation Proclamation in his office, which is now known as the Lincoln Bedroom. So again, this is his office, was on the second floor. It's the same office that Theodore Roosevelt would have used before he moved out of the second floor into the West Wing. So the room that was used by the president as an office, the room that Lincoln used as an office to sign the Emancipation Proclamation and do all of his business as his day-to-day office, now is the Lincoln Bedroom. So under Laura Bush's direction, the Lincoln Bedroom was refurbished in 2007 using historic research and incorporating furnishings that were purchased by the Lincolns. This painting on the left-hand side is called Waiting for the Hour, and it depicts enslaved people waiting for the hour in which they would be free on January 1st, 1863. It has traditionally been placed in the Lincoln Bedroom. You can see it in the picture on the top right-hand side, the painting on the wall in the Lincoln Bedroom, although President Barack Obama displayed the painting outside the Oval Office during his term. I don't know where it is right now, but I know that paintings, everything can move around the house all the time, which makes studying the White House a little challenging because things move. It's a house, it's an office. So we do have photographic evidence of it being here in the Lincoln Bedroom, and we know that Barack Obama had it outside the Oval Office when he lived there too. When Lyndon Johnson signed the Civil Rights Bill in the East Room on July 2nd, 1964, he believed it might be the most important document signed by a president since Lincoln's proclamation. A large television audience watched as Johnson stated that although racism had been a sad part of American history, our Constitution forbids it, the principles of our freedom forbid it, morality forbids it, and the law I sign tonight forbids it. And this took place in the East Room of the White House, which is the largest room in the house. Here's another photograph of the East Room. The East Room itself has hosted many bill signings and press conferences, and it has also acted as a stage for many events hosted by the President and First Lady. The White House was always intended to be a place where America's leader would greet citizens from across the nation and dignitaries from around the world. George Washington had established precedents for public receptions, and when John Adams moved into the White House, he continued them. On New Year's Day and on July 4th, the public was invited to the White House to visit the president. The widower, Martin Van Buren, called on his daughter-in-law, Angelica, to act as White House hostess during his administration. Angelica had traveled to the courts of Britain's Queen Victoria and France's Louis Philippe and thought she knew something about the proper etiquette required for a White House reception. Angelica introduced the practice of standing on a platform above the crowd and receiving homage from a discreet distance. So standing up on a platform and a stage and just welcoming visitors from far away. But when congressmen labeled her a Democratic peacock in full court costume strutting, she abandoned her more regal ways. On the other side of that spectrum, it was represented when Andrew Jackson was elected. Inauguration Day was another opportunity to pay a visit to the White House. After taking the oath of office at the Capitol, the president, congressmen, and the public would travel by foot, horse, or carriage back to the White House. When the war hero Jackson took office in 1829, a mob forced their way into the White House, looking for food and drink, standing on furniture with muddy boots, pushing their way through the rooms, hoping to congratulate Jackson in person. China ended up being smashed, and Jackson actually escaped through a window and spent the night in a nearby hotel with few people even noticing that he had left. The crowd soon spilled out into the lawn or onto the lawn and continued to drink punch from large tubs outside. It was a little bit more of a rowdy event and a welcome to his presidency. Open houses continued into the 20th century. These photographs here show a line of guests waiting to enter the White House and meet the president. This normally took place on New Year's Day, so January 1st, which is also what Abraham Lincoln did before he signed the Emancipation Proclamation. He had been shaking hands with visitors all morning and then was afraid when he signed his signature that it would be a little shaky because his hand was numb from shaking hands all morning. So this tradition lasted until 1933, when President Herbert Hoover canceled the New Year's Day reception after shaking hands with over 6,000 guests the year before. They just decided they were not going to be in town the next year, and they left the White House so that they would not have to do that again. And that's how that tradition ended. Because of security issues, the only such public event held today where the president or first lady might be on hand to greet guests is the annual White House Easter egg roll. So this takes place on the Monday after Easter, and this is a tradition that dates back to the 1870s. For over 200 years, well over 200 years, prominent guests have been invited to the president's house. Here we see a photograph of Albert Einstein, who toured America in 1921 as he lectured about his new theory of relativity, and he received an invitation from President Warren Harding, who is here. Herbert Hoover presented the National Geographic Society's gold medal to Amelia Earhart at the White House in 1932. And the king of rock and roll showed up at the White House gate and requested a meeting with President Richard Nixon, who knew a photo op when he saw one. I believe the National Archives has said that this particular photograph of Elvis and President Nixon is one of the most requested photographs in their collection. It's very, very popular, very famous. Of course, thousands of individuals have worked behind the scenes to help the White House operate and fulfill its many roles. This is a photograph of a former chief butler named Alonzo Fields. He was a former chief butler and a maitre d' who wrote about his experiences in a memoir called My 21 Years in the White House. And in his memoir, he writes this quote, "I see the White House as belonging to the people, not only as a home for a president every 4 years, but as a monument to the hopes of the people." So, and he worked at the White House from 1931 until 1953. And I do recommend his memoir if you're interested in learning more behind the scenes from his perspective at the White House. It is a very well-written book, very interesting. The White House is one of the rare places that is so intrinsically tied to American history, serving the roles as a home, an office, a museum, and a stage for each president who has lived there while leading our nation. It also serves as a symbol, representing the nation and our democracy, which is constantly evolving to suit the succession of presidents and to accommodate the requirements of the times. So with that, I want to thank you so much for joining us today, and I would be happy to turn it back over to Katie to answer some questions.
Oh, thank you, Courtney. That was a wonderful tour. We appreciate you.
Absolutely.
Loved all the pictures, and we have a couple questions here. So the first one actually is, where's the Buffalo Presidential Center located?
It's a great question. Thank you for that one. The Buffalo Presidential Center, the Buffalo Presidential Center is located in the second floor of the Central Library in downtown Buffalo.
Oh, thank you.
That's an easy one. So I should have mentioned that one. So thank you very much for that question.
We appreciate that. This next question is, what is your favorite room of the White House? Sorry if you already said this.
That's my favorite room. Oh, I do love the East Room just because of the size. I think when you walk into the East Room, you get a sense of all of the events and programs and bill signings and just the history. I think of the Roosevelt children roller skating in the East Room. There have been weddings, White House weddings in the East Room. So I feel like it's just a lot bigger than what you would expect, but it's also not as big as some other palaces and other places. So
Actually, Courtney, I think we lost your sound. I
oh no.
thought, oh, nope, you're back now. Okay, good.
I hit my speaker accidentally, so I apologize.
I'm sorry, we missed about half of what you were saying. I'm so sorry.
That's okay.
So you were saying that the East Room is your favorite because of all of the history, and then it looked like you were telling like a funny little anecdotal story that we missed.
Sorry about that. I said my other favorite room that I really enjoyed seeing was the movie theater. I got to see that in person once. It was right around the time that I was ending my tenure at the White House Historical Association, and I had been teaching about it for so long that it was exciting to finally see it in person.
Oh, how neat. Thank you. All right, so we've got a bunch of things that have come in here. So this one is, do you think we should build a new White House that will be state of the art for security?
That is a good question. I mean, because I am a historian by heart and a museum educator, would say no, because the history of the White House, this is Washington's design, this is what he chose, and so many presidents have worked so hard to preserve the integrity and the history of the house. So I don't see that happening. It doesn't mean that a lot of presidents have not tried to do that in the past. I think Caroline Harrison, the first lady, she was a very skilled artist, and she designed an entire new White House of what she would want to live in that included an art museum wing, just a very elaborate state of the art for the 19th century. And it has changed, and security has tightened and changed because of different events. So I know that Pennsylvania Avenue was they stopped all vehicle traffic on Pennsylvania Avenue in the aftermath of the Oklahoma City bombing in 1995. After 9/11, they stopped all public tours for a couple of years. I'd say at least 2 years, there were no public tours of the house at all. And when they did open it up, they had to change the way that we receive a tour of the White House. It's hard to believe before 9/11, you could show up at the White House Visitor Center the day of, and they passed out tickets to go inside the White House the same day. That's how my family saw it first in the early 90s. So you stood in line and got to go inside. Now you have to request tickets from your representatives in Congress in order to get a White House tour. So there are changes, the security and the gates and things that have evolved over time. And there might continue to be new restrictions as events take place, sadly, but I don't see anything changing at the White House.
Wow, thank you for all that information, Courtney. That actually kind of leads into the next thing we have here. So we have wonderful presentation, very informative, love the pictures, thank you. Is the White House still open to the public right now?
It is open to the public right now. It can be a little bit more challenging to get a ticket because you have to go through your member of Congress to request the tour. I think up to 6 months in advance that you can request a tour. And depending on where you live, you might have a better chance of getting a tour. So a representative might be getting fewer requests in Hawaii or from Hawaii than from Virginia. So it is challenging, and they do have to limit the number of people who can go in the house. And if there's an event like a bill signing, they could cancel all of the tours at the last minute anyway, but they do still offer tours of the White House. Absolutely.
Wow, okay, thank you for that. Next we have, oh my goodness, one of the best classes I've ever attended. Courtney is an excellent presenter. Thank you so much.
Well, it's very kind. Thank you.
I will say that's saying a lot because this person does a lot of our classes, so please know that that definitely means something.
Thank you.
Let's see, we have what pieces of Kittinger furniture are in the White House? Thank you.
Say that one more time. What pieces of furniture?
Kittinger furniture, if I'm saying that correctly.
Kittinger. That's a good question. That I'm not sure of. I know it's been a minute since I've looked at all of the original furnishings. The oldest furniture, if I could just throw a different fact at you, I know the oldest furnishings in the collection is a Belanger suite that is in the Blue Room of the White House. It was purchased by Monroe after the fire of 1814. So in 1817, when he moved in, he purchased a French suite of blue furniture, or it's now blue, so Blue Room furniture. So it does date over 200 years old. And when Mrs. Kennedy had her famous Valentine's Day tour, she highlighted the Belanger furniture and used it as an example of trying to bring some of the original historic furnishings back to the White House that had been sold off by other presidents. So she really started a drive to return artifacts that had a White House provenance that had been sold or given away, to bring them back and return them to the White House again. But I'm sorry, I don't know about I'll probably think about it as soon as I get off the call, but I'm not sure about the Kittinger.
That's okay. We appreciate the other facts anyways. And this said, Kittinger furniture is made in Buffalo, so maybe that's where the connection was from. Let's see.
Great
This
connection.
this person, oh, where did it go? Is wondering, is there a particular significance of the Oval Office for the Oval Office, design or otherwise?
Well, that's a great question. The former historian that I used to work with said that the press, who was very cruel, used to say that the Oval Office got its shape because they laid President Taft down and drew a big oval around him, which is not true, and very, very sad. But the shape of the oval itself was inspired by the oval rooms that are in the residence itself. So the Blue Room is an oval shape, the diplomatic reception room below. So right here in this picture, you can see the Blue Room is in the middle. The yellow oval room, which was originally the library and is now a sitting room, the yellow oval room. And then on the ground floor, where you can see the two lights and the door, is the diplomatic reception room, are all oval shaped. Some believe that was a design to help lighten the room, because you could add an extra window by bowing out the walls. So that is a kind of an architectural feature of the time, but the Oval Office was taken from that inspiration.
Okay, thanks, Courtney. We just have a couple more things here, if that's okay with you.
Absolutely.
Okay. This next thing is, if furniture was sold, how did they get Lincoln's original bedroom restored?
That is a great question. The Lincoln bedroom was restored in 2007, and they used a lot of documentation and archives to get a sense of what the wallpaper looked like and the carpeting, and it's all fabricated. It's new, but it's based on architectural research that they had in the White House collection. There are many artifacts that did not get sold and did not move away. In fact, the Lincoln bed is, I think, one of the most famous objects from the Lincoln purchase. Mrs. Lincoln purchased a lot of furniture for the White House when she was there. And the Lincoln bed was used as a bed by various presidents as well as in the guest room. So some of it was just, we have to go to storage, you have to see what's here and then find the provenance and then return them. So that was part of Mrs. Bush's, that was her mission, was to bring all of the furnishings that the Lincolns purchased and put it inside the Lincoln bedroom.
Okay, thank you. This next is wonderful presentation. I thoroughly enjoyed it. What brought you to Buffalo?
What brought me to Buffalo? Well, I am originally from Buffalo. I moved to the Buffalo area when I was in middle school and graduated from high school here. And so I returned to the Buffalo area a few years ago just to be closer to family. And I'm very happy to be working at the Naval Park and with the Presidential Center now. So just moving back home.
All right, well, we're happy to have you.
Thank you.
A couple more things here. Let's see. Superb presentation. Thanks, Courtney. When is the Presidential Center open?
It is open every Saturday from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. Again, in the second floor of the Central Library. And it is free. There are no advanced registration required. So you can walk in. We have some of our trustees, our board members are there every Saturday to answer questions and talk about the collection. I highly encourage a visit. Anybody can stop by at any point on Saturdays.
Thank you, Courtney. This person is wondering, can the sub-basement or bunker survive a nuclear attack? And if so, how many months or years of provisions are available and for how many people?
That is an interesting question. And I think for security reasons, I don't know that that information would ever be made public. So I don't know the answer to that. But I do know that it's still there and it has been used. I think Dick Cheney was there on 9/11 and that's where he was brought to during the attacks of September 11th. I don't know how long they would have provisions to stay down there, but I do know that it still exists.
All right, thank you. We'll leave it at that.
Okay.
This person is wondering, can you compare the White House to the facilities in other countries?
Say that one more time. It skipped just briefly for me.
Can you compare the White House to facilities in other countries?
That is an interesting question because there are so many other examples of residences for other heads of state that I know that when the White House was designed, it was a very conscious choice to make it smaller, to make it more modest, because we didn't want this to appear to be a home for kings. We were moving away from that and into democracy, or into a democracy. And so that was a very conscious choice to make it a little bit smaller and a little bit modest. But that there are so many different examples of heads of state that it would be almost impossible to compare it to every one of them. So there are differences. I know that there is a book that the White House Historical Association published a few years ago that is specifically about executive residences around the world. So that would be a good resource to check out to see how it compares to others.
Okay. Thank you. This next question is, I'm going to change it slightly. Are there particular things that each president changes or first lady changes when they go to the White House? Like, for example, what did Trump change, or Obama or Biden? Anything in particular?
Absolutely. Every president and first lady puts their own touch on the White House. They still have to work with the Committee for the Preservation of the White House and get approvals. So they can't just make the Red Room pink. So there are certain guidelines. Like, it is their house and it needs to reflect their tastes, but it also is the people's house. It's America's house, so it belongs to all of us. So every president has the ability to rearrange artworks, as I said before. They can move furniture. They can, the president famously redecorates the Oval Office pretty regularly. Not always, but pretty regularly when they move in. They will put their own kind of spin on the decorations of the carpet and the curtains in the Oval Office. I know the biggest projects that the Trump administration added, they restored the wallpaper in the Red Room. And they also, during the administration, restored some of the Belanger, the Blue Room furniture, the original from 207, over 200 years old. I know the White House Historical Association was created by Mrs. Kennedy in part to help fund all of these types of restoration and renovation projects so that the White House and the occupants of the White House would not have to go to Congress every time they needed to clean the curtains or purchase a new chandelier or bring in new art objects and artifacts for the White House. There are things that come up for auction all the time that the curators of the White House might put in a request to the Historical Association to purchase or use funds as a private nonprofit to bring things and restore things to the White House. So that's part of the role of the White House Historical Association, and they have worked with every First Lady and President since the Kennedy administration to help restore the rooms and make changes along the way.
Wow. Thank you, Courtney. And actually, okay, so now I'm just seeing a bunch of thank yous here, which is perfect because we're at time. Saying, wow, thank you so much for this information. Loved your pictures. I'm seeing, wow, your knowledge of the White House and its inhabitants are very impressive. Would love to see future classes offered by you. Great job, Courtney.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
So this is wonderful. Oh, let's see. We have, I believe, the beginning after Eisenhower, the gifts from foreign heads of state were U.S. property and not that of the president. Has that changed other policies for presidents?
That has not changed. There is a certain value attached to gifts given to the president. So if it's under a certain value, I can't remember what it is right now, then the presidents can keep it for themselves, or they have the option to purchase it from the government for the price that it is worth. Most of the time, gifts given to the president from foreign heads of state or other people will end up in the National Archives and the Presidential Library system. So a lot of times if you go to presidential libraries, you'll see on exhibit a selection of different gifts that were given to that president during their administration. But they do have the option and the ability to keep certain things. Again, it has to be a certain value, under a certain value, or they would have to purchase it with the value from the government.
Okay, wow. Well, thank you for that information. Last question, I promise you, this is the last thing. How many presidential libraries have you been to?
How many have I been to? There are, of the, I think there are 13 now, 14. I have been to at least 7.
Impressive.
Still have a few to go, but I will continue to work on that. And I encourage everybody to travel and visit them as well. They're a great resource.
Wonderful. Well, thank you, Courtney, for all this information, and to everyone who's on, thank you for participating, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.